Hi there, this is Andrea Mowry of Drea Renee Knits, and this is On the If I Want To, a weekly podcast where I answer some of your questions, and we get to hang out for a little bit, grab a hot beverage, knit, spin, and do a little chatting. So today, welcome to May. It is Me Made May. I, of course, already missed day one, but it gets to be whatever we want it to be and whatever helps us focus on our handmade wardrobe, put it together in new interesting ways. There's tons of information you can find on Instagram if you are interested in Me Made May. But I did get into my closet today. I am wearing my Wilder gown, which I sewed up a couple years ago now, and when I first finished it, I wasn't so sure about it. I wasn't sure if it fit me okay. But it has now become one of my go-tos. I think I just had to figure out how to wear it. It's got a really interesting neckline, which you can't see under my shawl. I'll show you at the end if I remember, because I've got my shawl all nice. I don't want to take it off. But anyways, I now love it, and I wear it like once a week. So it's always fun to find something you've made that maybe just has kind of gotten lost in the closet, or you weren't sure about it, and then you rediscover it and you're like, oh my gosh, I love this. I actually feel that way a lot about hand knits. Maybe not a lot, but I have definitely knit sweaters that I have felt unsure about when I first finished them. And then I wear it a couple times and I feel like that piece of clothing starts to drape on your body in a way. It's like it relaxes, and then all of a sudden it just fits better. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that, but that's actually been a big one for me. So I'll throw that out there as don't always judge things the second you bind them off or get them off your sewing machine. Like, give them a wash, wear them a few times, play with different outfits. And to me, that's part of the spirit of Me Made May, is we get to celebrate the things we've made and also play around with them and see new ways to style them and just make them work for our own wardrobe and style, which I think is really fun. I always get really inspired to get out of maybe my getting dressed rut. If any of y'all can relate, I will just, especially I work from home alone in my studio, so it's really easy to throw on a pair of leggings and a hoodie or a sweater and, sit there and do my work. But I always feel better when I put that little bit of extra effort into getting dressed. So I always feel like this is my refresher to actually enjoy and kind of celebrate getting ready for the day and feeling good in my clothes. Anyways, so I'm wearing my Wilder gown, and then this is the Cinnabar shawl, which is knit up in Spin Cycle Yarns Versus and dyed in the wool. It is a syncopated brioche shawl, so you can see like there's this dominant red and then it goes dominant gray. So it's just switching your brioche knits and your brioche pearls. It's a really fun technique to just add a little So that is what I am wearing today. That actually just sparked a little idea in my brain. I'm just gonna write myself a little note. Okay, so let's jump into some questions. The first question today kind of continues what I was just talking about a little bit, and I think something that probably quite a few of us can relate to. Knitting and body image. To get straight to the point, I avoid knitting garments because I'm unhappy with my body. I scroll my feed and am in absolute awe of the creativity of designers, but I avoid knitting anything except hats and shawls because I don't know how things will fit on me. All the time and investment of knitting a garment. I know swatching is key, but do you have any advice for getting over the mental block that your body is worthy of knitwear? So I know that this can be a tough one. I know a lot of us can relate to these feelings. Making our own clothing, it takes that extra time. It's not like we can just try it on, and so it can be really scary to commit that yarn or that fabric and that time to making something and then feeling nervous that then we won't like it when we're done. And so a few things. I have a few tips. I want to start by saying, I wonder if you would enjoy the Mindful Wardrobe Project by Sew Liberated. It is a great it's like an online workshop basically, and it talks all about, it actually dives quite thoroughly into body image and body shame. And they also just talk about curating a wardrobe that you feel good in, and it's quite empowering. I really enjoyed it, so I'm going to throw that out there. I know a lot of other people who have done the workshop and just it helped heal some of their body image stuff. But I want to start by saying your body is 100% worthy of your knitwear. And I think a couple things that will hopefully help you feel more confident in committing to making that thing. So, number one is looking beyond the designer photo. So sometimes what can happen for me is I look at a photo and I'm like, oh, I love that. But what I really love, if I kind of pick it apart, is the whole photo. I like the aesthetic of the person in the photo. I like what they're wearing with the top or the sweater or the pants they made, whatever. I like the whole thing. I like their hair. I like what's happening in the photo. And so sometimes I'm like, ooh, I love that. So for me, I'm going to kind of talk about sewing patterns because that's what I tend to buy and do these days since I write my own knitting patterns. So, but I think it applies to knitting too. So I'll see the thing and I'll be like, ooh, I want to make that. I have learned over the years that I need to pause and go, wait a minute. Do I just like the photo and their style and how it looks on them? Or does what they're wearing actually feel like it could have a home in my own wardrobe with my own style? Like, do I actually feel like, oh yeah, that is me? And one thing that can be helpful is, let's say you happen upon a pattern you like, check out the hashtag and start looking at people with different body shapes and sizes more similar to your own and be like, okay, I'm liking what I'm seeing here. I think that is the first step to deciding, is it truly your style? And then B, okay, I'm seeing it on other people that resemble myself, that make me feel like a little more confident in deciding to commit this time and yarn to this project. The next thing that I really, really recommend is going into your closet. Go look in your closet and see, what is your favorite top that you, when you're having a day that you just aren't feeling comfortable in your own skin, what's the top you would pull down and put on that's going to make you feel better? Or that is a go-to. Like anytime you're going on a trip, what's the first thing you grab and pack? Those are the things I tend to gravitate towards, and I will lay them out on the floor and I'll take those measurements. And that'll kind of help me decide, let's say I've picked a pattern, but I'm having trouble picking the size. That'll help guide me. And B, you can also look at, what does that top look like? Does it have a drop shoulder? Is it a raglan? Is it cropped? Is it long? Does it hit at the hip? Like, really deconstruct and write some notes. Okay, I really feel comfortable wearing this top that I already own, and here are some attributes that I think make me comfortable in it. So this is kind of what I want to replicate when I'm looking at knitwear and deciding what I want to knit. And yes, absolutely swatching and all those things so that it's gonna turn out to the specifications you want it to. Another thing I want to say is, I hope that you do give it a try, because I think the beauty of making our own clothing is that we can adjust it and modify it and make it for our unique body. I really recommend knitting and sewing for the body you have today. And I think that it can turn into this gift of love that you're giving yourself, so that you do know and that you do reinforce, like, I am 100% worthy of making this thing for myself. And every time you put it on, you get to, again, reinforce that belief of course I am worthy of the materials and the time that went into making this. I think it can be a really beautiful act of self-love. And again, so there's great resources out there for modifying for your unique body shape. There are some books out there. Amy Herzog has some great books all about taking proper measurements and adjusting fit on things. So I highly recommend her as a resource. But there's all kinds of stuff. If you search sweater modification, things like that online. You're going to find blog posts and all kinds of great tips that you might be helpful to dive into. Like, depending on your bust, you might want to add bust darts to a sweater. Just things like that. Finding your ideal length that hits you at a place that you really like. Knowing, okay, how much do I like a slimmer fit sleeve, or do I want something with more room to move and to layer over other pieces? I could kind of go on for a long time. I also find that there's a few people on Instagram who I love looking at their outfits, and it sometimes helped me envision, okay, how would I want to wear my sweater when I finish it? That again makes me feel like my best unique self. And how do I want to get dressed? And it gives you ideas and can also look at layering and things like that. There was another one that I was going to go to. What was I thinking? Darn it. It got away from me. Anyways, I hope some of that helps get you started. Again, measure something from your closet, check out those hashtags, look at the Mindful Wardrobe Project and see what you think about that. And now I remember. One of the things I will also say that I love about knitting is it's more forgiving than you might think. So you do have a certain amount of wiggle room in your blocking where you can pull on the sleeves to make them a little longer or pull them out sideways to make them a little wider. Same with the body. Like, knit fabric is a flexible fabric. It is not a stiff fabric with hard seams. It tends to be quite flexible. So I think that's another thing. Also, peeking at a designer's intention for ease. This is something that we've talked about quite a bit. It comes up a lot because ease intimidates people, whether it be a lot or a little or whatever it is. Look at what the designer intended for that pattern, because sometimes that really does play an important role on the final fit. And sometimes people just totally ignore it and they're like, no, I only like this much ease. And that's fine. If it's working for you, keep doing it. But if it's not, that's another thing to consider is, okay, I'm trying to knit this sweater with a way different ease than what the designer intended. Just a little recap, ease is the size of your sweater compared to the size of your body. And whether it have positive ease, meaning the sweater is bigger than your body, or negative ease, meaning the sweater is smaller than your body and is going to fit much more snugly. So pretty much every designer is going to put on there intended to be worn with, this much or this little ease. And that's a good cue on what that designer was thinking when they wrote that pattern. So it can kind of help guide you. Okay, is this going to be a good fit for me? Like, absolutely not. I don't like something with a ton of positive ease, or I don't like something with a negative ease. That'll kind of help whittle down your options. You might also want to stick with a pattern that's been knit a lot, because okay, that this pattern's been knit by all kinds of people, so I can really check it out. I can trust it. Again, just as especially a first pattern, because you might not want to jump into modifying and stuff like that until you've wet your whistle and tried that, a pattern and knit it to completion. One thing I will say too is everything I've just said, I've put into practice since I went through a learning curve from when I first started knitting sweaters. When I first started knitting sweaters, I didn't pay a lot of attention to my own style, what would work in my wardrobe, what I felt comfortable wearing. And I would kind of do what I said before of just like, ooh, that looks cool, I'm going to make it. And so I did have a series of sweaters that I would make, and then I'd be like, oh, this is not for me. I don't love the way it fits, whatever it may be. And it took me a little while to hone it in. So hopefully these tips will help you kind of skip that learning curve and get to something that you really love. Do not forget to block. That'll be my last thing on this question. In my younger days, did not understand the virtue of blocking. And I had some sweaters I didn't block, and I was like, I hate this. If I could go back in time and just give that sweater a good block, I probably would have loved it. So that is also something remember that's the final step. You got to block that sweater, because that's what's going to give it its final drape and everything that's so important in our clothing. So I think you should do it, but lead with joy, lead with knowing that you are 100% worthy, and take your time to pick. And yeah, I hope these are helpful. If anybody else has any helpful, encouraging tips for jumping into that first sweater, please feel free to share them in the comments. All right, next question. I am a fairly new spinner, about 2 months in, and I've noticed that my drafting has improved a lot already. But things seem to take a big leap forward when I tried Rollags. Something about this preparation seems to help me draft a much thinner single, which I like since I typically knit with yarns in the fingering to worsted range and I'm not really a bulky yarn girl. Can you help me understand what it is about the Rollags that might be working well for me? Is there anything I can do to produce these sorts of nice results with comb top, the other preparation I have at home besides just practicing more? So I think the reason you're having success with Rollags, and Rollags are what got me on my way to woolen spinning. And I think you have knit the nail on the head. Hit the nail on the head. I just have knitting on my mind. With the preparation. So the thing with a Rollag is it's all those fibers are in a tube like this. They're all spiraled around each other. Well, when we're spinning, that's basically what we're trying to create. We're trying to create twist into the fiber so it holds together. So a Rollag is perfectly prepared to just draft out into a twist. And I think that's why you're having an easy go with that, which is so awesome. Excuse me. But as far as wanting to be able to feel that same confidence with a different fiber prep, especially with the comb top, here is my advice. With comb top, the thing that ended up making it the easiest for me during my journey was learning how to adjust my wheel. So whatever you're spinning on, did you say what you're spinning on? I don't see what you're spinning on. So I'm going to start with a wheel, then I'm going to jump to a spindle in case you're doing spindle. So what helped me was learning how to adjust my wheel and letting down that brake a little bit. I guess it's really going to depend on each individual, but for me, the reason I would kind of fight with my comb top is because it would just be pulling out of my hand too fast. So then I would do the hard grip. So you've probably heard, like, you want to hold your fiber like a baby bird, like really gentle. You don't want to, and so by turning my brake, like easing up on that brake a little bit, it wasn't just tearing it out of my hand so fast. So slow the components on your wheel down that you can. Tread a little slower, turn down that brake so it's not whipping out of your hand. And so you can really just take your time to slowly draft out. And really what it comes down to is how much fiber you are pinching out into that supply is how thick your single is going to be. So you want that single to be thinner, pinch out less fiber. You want it to be thicker, grab more fiber. That's really what it comes down to. Now, in regards to if you are using a spindle, it's going to depend on what spindle you're using, but I feel like if you're using a spindle, maybe you'd be using a support spindle if you're really zooming along with your Rollags just fine. And I personally find it very challenging to spin on a supported spindle from comb top. I still do. I would rather either then do it from the fold from the tip. So I'm going to take out a fiber length, you know, a little clump, if you will, fold it over my finger, and then I'm going to let it spin off the tip of my finger. I'm going to do it that way, or I'm going to make Rollags, because I find that just going from comb top, it's a little too slippery and I want it to grab onto itself more, which comb top, it's also organized and nice that sometimes it just kind of wants to slip apart too much for my liking when it comes to spindle spinning. I do love it for a drop spindle, and I find that I can go straight from the braid for a drop spindle without doing anything special. So if you are in the spindle world, maybe give drop spindle a go. But that would be some of my tips to help with going from the comb top, is kind of slow it down and really watch what you're doing, but it's how much you're pinching out as you're drafting if you're doing a short forward like that. If you're trying to do more of a long draw, again, that's a little trickier with comb top because it's just a little trickier to control that fiber supply, and you might have better luck going for a woolen prep for something like that if you're trying to do long draw. So it depends on the way you're trying to draft. But I hope that's helpful. All right, question number 3. Arthritis and joint pain are real for me, but my doctor encourages my knitting as it is a use it or lose it kind of situation. You know what's interesting is my grandma, her doctor as well, said keep making your homemade bread, kneading her bread, and keep knitting because it was really helping with her joint health with her arthritis. So I've heard that before as well. That being said, I find working with wool and woolen fibers are easiest on my hands. I experience less fatigue, but what about lighter summer knits? Is a mixed cotton and wool blend an option, or does the presence of a bit of cotton null and void the effect of the wool in terms of an easier fiber with less fatigue? Can I wear mostly wool in summer going to a fingering weight perhaps? Please share any ideas or thoughts you may have. So I feel the same exact way. I really struggle to knit a 100% cotton or linen yarn. They're just really hard on my hands. They don't have as much elasticity, and I think that the lack of that is what kind of makes my hands feel cramped up and tired, fatigued, as you said. So I do find that a wool cotton blend is great for me. I'm actually knitting with one right now and I love it. I'm knitting with Confluence Cotton from the Farmer's Daughter Fibers, and it is delightful to knit with. So I do think that you could lighten up your wool with a touch of cotton and it would probably be pretty delightful, and I think it would be okay. Obviously, I would just buy one skein and try it out and make sure it does work for you, but I find I don't experience the same hand issues I do as with like a 100% cotton or linen. As far as what you can wear in the summer, absolutely you can wear a little wool in the summer. You can wear a lot of wool in the summer. It is going to depend where you live and how you tolerate it. But I find that so many places are blasting that AC, so a little wool can kind of go a long way and be quite nice. I absolutely have actually 2 summer tops. One is 100% wool and I wear it, and the other one is a cotton wool blend, and I wear them during the summer and I'm fine in them. I would probably stay away from fuzzy yarns. I do hear from more people that sometimes like a mohair can get a little pokey if you're really hot. So that's something I would maybe not do for a total summer knit if you're trying to do, but then some people don't mind it at all. So I do think it's personal preference. So absolutely, I think you can wear wool, especially if you do a shawl or something like that. And then for tops, I think I would try one of those cotton wool blends and see what you think. If it's fingering weight, if it's an open stitch pattern, I don't think it's gonna make you too hot. So give it a go. Question number 4. Sometimes you'll put in extra super sweet messages and I try to get to the beef of the beef. I don't know what I'm saying. But I try to get to the nitty gritty of just the question part. So that is why you sometimes see me go, because I'm reading through. Okay. I have been wanting to start the tessellated cardigan, but must admit I've had trouble with my buttonholes not holding a stiff shape. Therefore, I require much larger buttons for the plackets to stay closed. Do you have any tips for knitting buttonholes so that they function properly? I've been putting off starting this project because of the buttonhole requirement and have even thought about using the yarn I have for another tessellated pullover. Should I figure out how to make better buttonholes, omit the buttonholes altogether, or stick with the pullover because I already know I love it? I don't think you should give up on buttonholes. I think that you can absolutely do it. Here's what I would recommend. First thing I would do is knit a swatch with the buttonholes as they are written in the pattern. Knit a few, wet block it, try your buttons, see how they do. It might be the buttonhole you've tried in the past. There are lots of different ways to create buttonholes, so don't give up yet. It might mean that you need a different method. Maybe in the tessellated cardigan, I might have used the method you've tried and you're like, I know it's going to be too big. That method, you use a certain amount of stitches depending on buttonhole size. So if I always make giant buttonholes, knock a stitch off of there. You'll have to tweak it a little bit, but you can, I show the method in there. So you would just subtract 1 stitch. And I think it would be pretty easy for you to figure out the instructions with 1 less stitch. So that's an option too, so you can make it a little smaller. Other option is, don't be afraid. If you have cardigans that you've already knit and then the buttonholes got too big and now you feel like, ugh, I'm gonna have to buy new buttons to make this work. If you still have that yarn that you used, go and do a little duplicate stitch, tighten up the corners of that buttonhole. When it's buttoned, no one's gonna see it. And if you do, like, try to do it a duplicate stitch method so it still looks like a nice little knit stitch on either side. Even if you don't make it, I mean, who cares? No one's gonna be looking at your buttonholes. Just tighten them up. Take a little scrap yarn and tighten up those buttonholes, and all is not lost. So don't give up on the buttonholes. Again, I would definitely start with the swatch and try them out. And that way, you know, you can go into it confidently. If you decide, okay, they're still too big, I want to try reducing a stitch. Again, practicing on that swatch so you know that you can modify those instructions to do 1 less stitch, and it'll be good. It'll be good. You can do it. Okay, last question. I am going to make the Velocore and try to use stash yarn. I have enough yardage for 1 main color, but I want to use 5 140-yard minis for the contrasting colors. The minis are in an ombre set that go from light to dark. Any suggestions on how to use the colors? Should I follow the ombre, mix it up? What have you found looks the best for a cohesive look? So I have actually knit a Velocore where instead of doing the 2 contrast colors, you do 1 main contrast color and then there's stripes of a secondary contrast color. I swapped those out for 1 ball, or however much yarn it took me, of spin cycle. So if it were me, I would do the ombre effect that the minis were intended for, and I think it would be similar to the effect that I got with spin cycle, where it kind of moves as a gradient through the backdrop, and that sweater is so perfect for that kind of look. It looks really, really beautiful with a gradient or ombre or fade effect. So that is what I would do. 100%. You could do something fun where you broke each of those minis in half. So you could have it go like light to dark, dark to light. But I think I would probably keep it easy and just keep them right in order and go straight through to the end. There you go. That's what I would do. All right. We are done with all of that. So we are in the final month of the DRK March to May knit along. I have had so much fun seeing more FOs pop up in my Instagram feed. That's been really, really neat to see everyone's finished sweaters and shawls. So we have till the end of this month to finish all of our stuff up. It's not even too late to join. You can totally knock out a project in the final month if you want to. And then in just a couple weeks, I am releasing my newest pattern, which will be for our knit along challenge that occurs at the end of May. So fun stuff going on. We are still smack dab in the middle of the 100 days of long draw. I am zooming along and having so much fun. I'm actually right now plying. I'll show you. Oop. I've got my e-spinner right here, and then you can see my yarn going all the way back to there. And I am plying one of my spindle spins right now. I'm almost done. I've got a couple bobbins left to go. So that's so fun. It's going to be a gradient. Speaking of gradients, it is a gradient from Ingle Nook, and I can't wait. I haven't finished a skein of yarn in a long time. So I'm ready to have some finished skeins to feel like, yes. But the long draw is going so good now that I've got my wheel working the way I want it to. I am zooming through my bats and I'm finding it really relaxing. I'm doing a lot of longer projects right now. I have 2 sweater spins going and a big combo spin. So I needed a quick and dirty, get her done kind of spin. So I actually pulled out my little tiny Luette Victoria wheel. It's a little travel wheel, and I busted out a 2-ply. This is a colorway from Wound Up Fiber Arts. Why don't you ever want to focus? There she is. And it was really fun. I haven't done a colorway like this before. It was a lot of white with like little splashes of fun color. I even think it's called something like Fun Party party fun. I have the tag around here somewhere. Summer party. I don't know what it's called. But I saw that One Up Fiber Arts had spun it, and I was like, that looks so good spun up. So I went much thicker than my usual. This is going to probably be at least a 2-ply worsted weight. So I'm really excited to apply this up and get it in the bath. So spinning is going great. We are also doing our 100 days of knitting, which I've also loved. I try to really treat that time, no matter if I'm working on work knits or personal knits. I try to let that be just a little quiet, special moment in my day where I kind of consciously get into my knitting and use it as a little self-care moment. So that's been so great. And then of course we are continuing on our DRK Spin It to Knit It Knit Along Traveler Edition, which I have got my sweater out. It's actually sitting over by my chair, and I think I am going to start using that as my 15 minutes a day of knitting. That one is total for me, not for work, just for fun knit. And I've had so much work knitting to do that I think it would be, I haven't been able to knit on it in forever. So I think it would be really fun to pick that back up and let that be my 15 minutes of special knitting every day. So we would love to have you join in on any of those things. You can find links, hashtags, all that good stuff, along with links to what I'm wearing today in the show notes below. And I think that is everything. Am I forgetting anything? I don't think so. I did a big tidy up. You can't tell by what's behind me, but I actually had a big old tidy up in my studio the other day and it felt really good. So there you go. That's it. That's what I've got. I am actually, just maybe somebody else will find this fun. I had a moment, I was reading a book, and in the book, a sister says to another sister, have you heard, like, I think you should sign up. It was a sister giving unsolicited advice to the other sister saying, I think you should try out this decluttering service where they text you every day and you declutter for 5 minutes and it all adds up. And I was like, that's actually a really good idea. I think it's just that spring cleaning. I'm getting hit by that. It's kind of like that nesting feeling where you're like, all right, it is time to get to work. So my husband and I are dedicating 20 minutes a day to being like, okay, let's go to this corner and what are we done with? What can we declutter, clean up, tidy up, freshen up? It's definitely spring cleaning. It is. It's that little like, okay, let's do all the things. But it's felt so good. And I love looking around my studio and doing that same thing with my stash and all that good stuff. So that's what I'm doing. Feel free to join me. Maybe we should do that in the future, like 100 days of decluttering. That could be kind of fun. I also do want to do 100 days of destashing. Ooh, that's a really good one, because we could use that no matter what your craft. 100 days of destash, as in, okay, the way I was thinking about that was like working from the stash. Any stash, yarn, fabric, fiber, but destashing sounds more like you're going to get rid of it. Okay, I'll work on the name. All right, I hope that you have a fantastic weekend. I hope to see you back here next week. Feel free to pop a question through the link in the show notes, and I hope you get to make something this weekend. Bye.